Coming up next on Stop the Threat, a peaceful Saturday afternoon at home is interrupted by a television report that 3 dangerous men have evaded law enforcement and are now in your neighborhood. You lock the doors and the windows. What happens next even surprised us. Stop the Threat starts now. Hello and welcome to Stop the Threat. My name is James Towle. On today's episode, we're taking you to the great state of Kentucky. Kentucky has stand your ground laws, and it is also a shall issue state. But before we get started, let me ask you this question. If you knew criminals had escaped in your neighborhood and they were on the loose, what would you do? Lock the doors or go hunting? We're going to try to answer that question for you with the reenactment we have in store. But before we do that, let me introduce you to this week's law enforcement panel. Wes Doss, 20-year career in law enforcement, is now presently president of Kyber Interactive Associates and a returning contributor to Stop the Threat. Chris Wolf. Chris has been with law enforcement in the state of Louisiana for 17 years. Bill Duggan. Bill has been with a police officer with the state of Massachusetts for 13 years. But before we get started, let's find out a little bit more about our panelists. Wes, let me start with asking you about your book, which I haven't had the opportunity of reading. I do appreciate it. You've made it out and actually signed it, which is very nice. So tell me about Condition to Win.
Well, Condition to Win is my second book, and essentially it was a training psychology book that was aimed at high performance orientation for high demand type activities, firearms, gunfighting, anything within that use of force and force application realm.
Okay, so the people who would probably be the most interested in this would be law enforcement?
Well, that was my initial aim, but we've had a whole slew of just enthusiasts, people that are concerned about their performance in a self-defense format. I've even had some university wrestling and football coaches have bought it and have even given me a couple of callbacks on it as far as some of the information.
Well, part of the introduction, I did fail to mention that Wes does have a PhD, so they are very well written, and I'm looking forward to reading, especially Condition to Win. Chris, what's going on in Louisiana? Tell me what you're doing.
Besides the heat, I'm currently a firearms instructor for a law enforcement metropolitan area, and I'm assigned to a training division there. So it is always an adventure in central Louisiana, and great to be here.
Okay, great. How many officers do you normally work with in a training situation?
Training situation could go from anywhere from 15 to 80.
Okay, good. And you have nice facilities there to
very good. Absolutely.
The state of Louisiana has been very generous with you?
Very supportive.
Yeah.
Very supportive of their law enforcement community.
Okay. All right. Bill, tell us a little bit about what goes on in Massachusetts and what you're doing.
Well, currently I'm assigned to the Detective Bureau, but I too am the training officer for my department. So I do all the firearms instruction, and I sometimes teach at our academy.
You know, when we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what's going to take place in Part 1, and I will show you Part 1. Welcome back to Stop the Threat. I asked you a question earlier about escaped criminals and what you would do if they were in your neighborhood. I think most of us would probably lock the doors. But in Part 1 of today's episode, called On the Run, it may be different than that. Let's watch it.
The chase started earlier today when state police clocked the suspect's vehicle going 78 in a 55 zone and gave pursuit. Since then, the suspect has pushed speeds of 120 on the highway. They just hit a spike strip. They've pulled over. One of them just ran into town by exit 49. If you live in the area, stay inside and don't answer the door for anyone you don't know. Police will be sent.
Come on, it's over. Let's eat.
What do you mean it's over? They didn't catch the guys, and one of them just ran into town.
Yeah, the other side of town.
It's only 2 miles away.
Police have released a sketch of one of the suspects in today's pursuit. If you see this man in your area, call the police immediately. Stay indoors and do not go after him. I repeat, please call the police as soon as you have any information about the
Just
suspect.
in case.
Just in case. Hey, Bob, you better come take a look at this.
Come on, there's the sheriff.
What's going on, Sheriff? Just some guy.
Evening, Sheriff. What's going on?
Evening, Robert, Troy. Just going back in your house and lock the door. You too, Kenneth.
Why? What's going on? We can help.
Don't. State police will widen the search radius for the guy that got away this afternoon. They still hadn't found him. Just go on inside and lock your doors.
Come on, Sheriff. Let us help. We always help each other out around here.
Yeah.
Fine. But if you see him, you come and get me, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's a small town, all right? And it is in Kentucky, and they do have a relationship with the sheriff. Now, I'm not going to say, and I think you'll probably agree with me, that this is probably not commonplace in most law enforcement areas. But so I don't know, but you can certainly give me your point of view as to whether or not you would ask for help or allow a citizen to be involved in something like that.
Well, James, I think if you remember not too long ago in Watertown, we just dealt with that, with the Boston bombing. And it was for over at least a 24-hour period of time that law enforcement told everybody to lock their doors, stay in the house.
That's right.
And they had to deal with that. And there was, I remember some pictures of police officers delivering milk because it was such a long time that the citizens were requiring food and groceries and stuff like that. So we just had that incident, so something similar to that.
Okay, but you probably would not have been comfortable with having citizens go hunting for.
No.
Right.
That's
right.
not what.
Hey, how
something
about
we'd advise.
Louisiana? What would you do?
I'd have to agree with you that that's not very commonplace to encourage citizens to be involved in a law enforcement action by any stretch of the means. I mean, obviously you would want citizens to assist you by being good witnesses. However, that's where the line has to be drawn. Is there's a safety issue that should overtake everything.
Okay, suppose we just look beyond that a little bit, Wes, and we went, okay, they didn't come out, and maybe they didn't speak to the sheriff, but they assumed some sort of mantle of authority because it was their neighborhood, and they went out and started getting involved. You probably wouldn't be very comfortable with that.
No, I mean there's this obviously a natural tendency to to stand up, defend yourself, do what it takes, kind of thought process. But what a lot of people don't think about, especially in a situation like that, you're out there while the police are out there looking for this guy, and maybe you don't look like this guy, but you're just another character on the street, and you could be misidentified as a participant or a constituent in this event. A lot of times it's better just to be that witness, be vigilant and be ready to call 911 and tell authorities, hey, I just saw the guy that I just saw on the news here. And that way you're able to at least assist by directing the law enforcement to come to the specific location.
Okay. Bill, I can tell you want to add to that.
Well, I was just thinking that also going out, and these two gentlemen had their firearms with them. That just adds a whole nother.
Yeah, this is Kentucky now.
Well,
okay?
yeah, I know.
This is not Massachusetts. This is Kentucky.
So it's a little more commonplace, sure.
It's a little more commonplace, even in Louisiana. I mean, there's a lot of armed citizens in Louisiana, in small town. I'll give you a little bit more on this. The sheriff was actually involved with them through the Rotary Club, through some of the things in this very small town. So it was a friendly And it is Kentucky, and I don't want to overstress that because I have a lot of good viewers in Kentucky, but I know that you have a very friendly feeling towards one another in small towns, and that's even true in Texas. I'd still, with all of us are probably in agreement that this is not the right thing to do, that I think we can all agree that being a good observer, stay in your home, watch the television, keep up with the news, and when we come back, I'll show you part 2. You might be surprised. Hello and welcome back to Stop the Threat. You've seen part 1. I think we've had a pretty good discussion on law enforcement's feelings on that subject, and I think we're all in agreement that being a good observer, staying in your home, I think, Bill, you pointed out a real good example with the Boston bombers, and there was a lot of that was like hundreds of people, wasn't it?
Sure, yeah, cities, yeah, different
and
towns.
And that was good cooperation on the part of the residents?
Very good cooperation among the residents, yeah.
Okay, so no one got out into the vigilante kind of an attitude or decided to do that. And how? Why do you think that was? I mean, is there that much good relationships between law enforcement and?
Sure. I think also the fear of terrorism, which is being kind of on the forefront of everybody's minds now.
Right.
They want to help. They want to do everything they can and staying out of the way, and staying in your homes is one of the easiest ways to do that.
Okay. All right. Well, I think then we can all agree that staying probably in our homes, watching the news, staying up to date with what is taking place in the neighborhood, but don't become involved. Well, that may not be so in Kentucky. This is a real story. Let me just remind everybody that these reenactments are real. And here is part 2.
Fine, but if you see him, you come get me, okay?
Yes, sir.
Hey, who's that? I don't recognize him.
Hey, buddy, hold up.
I think that's the guy.
Hey,
Back. I just want to ask you a few questions.
he's getting away. Hey!
Stop or we'll shoot! Don't shoot. Don't shoot.
Put your knees on the ground and your hands behind your head.
Kenny, go get the sheriff. Sheriff, we found the guy.
Okay, well, that is what took place. And I'm going to just start off by saying that it did have a successful ending. And no one got shot. Everything, there was plenty of individuals there so that, no one was left trying to hold him at gunpoint and go for the sheriff at the same time. Give me your thoughts, Wes.
It looked pretty innocuous. It looked pretty, pretty safe, pretty sane. From the clip being as limited as it is, it's kind of hard to tell whether they were out on patrol or they just got done talking to the sheriff and were walking back to their apartment. But it didn't seem too far out of as a stretch, to be in your neighborhood. It's not that they went out seeking this guy. It seems like they just sort of stumbled across him as he came walking through their neighborhood.
Yeah, actually, the fact of the matter is they went hunting.
Okay.
Okay, those were the facts that we were able to obtain. Once the sheriff had kind of blessed them for what they were going to do and left them with the advice of, if you see him, get back with me. Now, they might have gone a couple of steps further than that, but they were, in fact, on the hunt. Bill?
I think it did turn out okay, but it could have went drastically wrong very quickly. You're saying this is a small community, which was pretty obvious from the clip. But if go back to the Boston bombing, where there are state police and sheriffs and local police everywhere, even federal agencies, if they had run across something like that, not knowing who that was, 2 guys pointing a gun at somebody else, it's hard to.
Well, you have a
differentiate.
good point there because, and I didn't tell you this, I was going to give it to you in the follow-up, a number of agencies became involved.
Sure.
Okay? So it wasn't just the sheriff in the small town. Because of the car chase, it involved a lot of other agencies, and they were all coming at the same time. Right. So this happened to take place before they arrived.
Sure.
But, you know, my question is, even though there were 2 of them armed, we don't know, in fact, because there were 3 criminals who were on the run, we don't know that one of those criminals could, or all of them could have been armed. I mean, there could have been a gunfight here.
Certainly.
Right? I think, personally, and I think I can agree on part 1 here, that this wasn't a good idea, and now they just kind of lucked out, is the way I'm going to put that. What do you think?
I still think it was a bad idea that they were involved in the whole incident. The tactics that are involved, you know, it's no secret. I mean, kids nowadays, they learn tactics from playing video games on, you know, every single day from 6 years and up. If there were multiple suspects involved in this chase, there's multiple agencies involved in the whole incident. There's a breakdown of communication, whether they want to agree to it or not. However, there is going to be a breakdown of communication between agencies. If there's multiple suspects and you have these groups of citizens that are out looking, what's to stop your suspects that are being chased from employing their own counter tactics to set up their decoy out and have the citizens come out? Now they've put themselves in a position to be ambushed, to have their own weapons taken from them, and they've compounded the problem by becoming part of it.
And in fact, could have become hostages.
Absolutely.
Huh?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. Well, that probably is my feeling on that as well. I'm not sure that viewers, like I said, this is a true story. I think it's one of those things that may happen occasionally. I don't think any of us here on the panel wants to give you any advice that would suggest that you would do something like this. I think it was a very dangerous situation. I think they were very lucky for what they had done. And when we come back, we'll ask a few more questions about it. Welcome back to Stop the Threat. We have looked at part 1. We've looked at part 2. I think we've probably covered this pretty well. We all can agree it was a very dangerous situation for people who are not involved in law enforcement. In fact, I'll even go one step further and say it was a dangerous situation for people involved in law enforcement. And you have multiple agencies now converging on this area. And I think you pointed out that communication sometimes can go awry between agencies. And I know a lot of the viewers are assuming that everything is perfect with law enforcement and they work and communicate well. The fact of the matter is that may not be true. Yes or no, Wes?
That's 100% true.
Yeah,
I mean, even in a small or a mid-sized agency, there's even, under highly charged circumstances, could even be confusion among personnel. It's dark, you can't see very well, everybody's excited, everybody's keyed up. Officers have just been in a pursuit, and you have a guy running around a neighborhood. It's easy to mistake somebody for somebody who they aren't.
Right, right. And Bill, I think during that break you brought up a good point about the situation with the Boston bomber and the homeowner. That bring that to us.
Well, exactly. The homeowner that found his boat cover in his backyard, which led to the capture of the terrorist, he saw the cover was pulled back a little bit on his boat. Instead of going to investigate it further because he knew the situation, was watching the news, he went in and called the police, called the authorities, and they came down and were able to apprehend him.
Yeah, you know, I think that's outstanding because, you know, I can think to myself, for him just to come out the door and look and see that the canvas has obviously been disturbed and still have the part of mind to go back in rather than to go forward and say, well, I wonder if something's wrong there. You know, you've got to. I wonder if he was at all acknowledged for that. Was he? Are we guessing?
I believe he was commended. I think he did go out and check to a certain point to verify his own suspicions, and then as soon as he didn't try to apprehend the terrorist himself, he went right back and he got the authorities.
Right. Yeah. I think that anything like that happened in any of your watch?
That's a pretty exact set of circumstances when you have several communities that are on this high level of alert. I've never experienced anything like that. Now, there's always, it happens on a regular basis in law enforcement. You have something that happens in a particular area, and the community does come together to put this, to help solve the problem. I don't necessarily want to say to catch the bad guy, however, comes down to it, that's pretty much what we're talking about. So community will come together, they'll give you information, and it's a good feeling. It is. It's a good thing for the community to get involved and help solve their own problems.
All right. Wes, you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's pretty much says it all. I mean, it's going back and advocating that responsible behavior on the part of everybody. You can get involved, but it doesn't mean you have to get into the middle of the fray.
Yeah, I don't think there's probably been any incident that I can think of where if you're going to have a lot of sirens and lights, and you've got news broadcasts. The larger the city you're in, probably the more involved citizens are going to be. I mean, you can't tell me that when you are going to the scene that you haven't come across citizens and were concerned.
Sure.
So, and I think that's pretty commonplace in anything, the larger it is. I'd like to go, I think there's a lot more we could cover here. Unfortunately, again, we've run out of time. I had an email I would like to read, but it's probably not going to take place. I thank you for tuning in. I know you have a lot of questions you'd like to ask law enforcement. Send me an email. I'll see you next week. Be safe, be trained, be alert.